In the vast silence of space, there are places where even time feels forgotten, where light bends around ancient metal, where voices from a long-dead civilization still hum through stone and circuitry. And in those hollow places, you'll find stories. Not the kind you read in databanks, but the kind you feel. This is Halo, a universe of war, sacrifice, forgotten gods, and broken promises. But beneath the surface, beneath the pulse rifles and energy swords, there's something deeper, something the UNSC never truly understood, something the Spartans were never trained to face. Tonight, we're not here to fight, we're here to listen. Because the Halo universe is full of theories, whispers, quiet puzzles scattered like ash in the ruins of 100 civilizations, questions about who we were and what we might become. Who built the rings and why? What was the flood really meant to do? Was Cortana's path rebellion or prophecy? And are the Forerunners truly gone or simply waiting? This video is not about gameplay, not about kill streaks or mechanics. It's a journey into the unknown corners of Halo's mythos. A chance to slow down and look at the galaxy through a different lens, one that sees past the missions, the maps, the objectives. We're going to explore 10 deep Halo theories, each one detailed, speculative, and rooted in the lore. Some are grounded in ancient history, others stretch into strange possibilities. All of them ask the same thing: what if there's more to Halo than we were ever meant to know? So whether you're lying down for the night, out on a long drive, or just looking to get lost in a universe where myth and technology collide, welcome. Take a breath. Power down your hug. Let the stars drift by, and let's begin. Theory number 1. The Forerunners didn't die. They evolved beyond this galaxy. In the ancient records of Halo's lore, the Forerunners are described as a powerful, almost godlike species that once ruled the galaxy. They wielded impossible technologies. They reshaped planets. They built megastructures that defy modern understanding. The Ark, the Shield Worlds, the Halo Array. And then, they were gone. After firing the Halo rings to stop the flood, we're told they accepted their own extinction, chose sacrifice, became extinct by choice to preserve lesser species, like humanity. But something about that story doesn't quite fit. How could a civilization that built machines to preserve life, that constructed entire dimensions to store knowledge, that survived for millions of years, simply disappear? This theory suggests they didn't. That the Forerunners didn't go extinct. They transcended. They evolved into something beyond physical form, beyond the galaxy itself. And they may still be watching. The logic of the Mantle. To understand this theory, we have to go back to the Forerunners' deepest belief system, the Mantle of responsibility. The Mantle wasn't just a political philosophy. It was sacred. It dictated that the most advanced race in the galaxy had a duty to protect all life, to preserve, guide, and nurture evolution. The Forerunners believed they inherited the Mantle from the precursors, and that one day, another species would inherit it from them. Their entire civilization was shaped around this idea. But here's the problem. If the Mantle was truly that important to them, wouldn't extinction violate its principles? The Forerunners may have known the flood was too widespread to defeat with war. But if they truly fired the Halos to save life, why wouldn't they preserve themselves too? Why not continue their stewardship? Unless extinction wasn't the end. Unless it was the next step. The domain, a digital afterlife. One of the most intriguing pieces of Forerunner tech is the domain. It's a vast, almost mystical data network. Something like a galactic neural net. A repository of all knowledge, all thought, all memory. The domain wasn't just a server farm. It was a conscious archive. And the Forerunners were deeply tied to it. Not just for data, but spiritually. Many believed that upon death, their essences would return to the domain, that they would live on within its circuits. During the Human Forerunner Wars, the domain was damaged by the ancient humans, and when the Halo rings were activated, it was temporarily cut off. But what if the Forerunners didn't just accept death? What if they migrated? Not physically, but digitally. If they could upload consciousness, If they truly mastered the soul through science, then the Halo array may not have been their grave, it may have been their portal. The transcendence theory. There's growing speculation that the Forerunners didn't vanish, but ascended into a higher form of existence. Clues appear throughout the expanded lore. In Silentium, the final book of the Forerunner trilogy, the librarian hints at evolution continuing beyond biology. She speaks of guiding humanity from beyond, even after her physical death. Some Forerunner constructs behave almost like avatars, digital fragments left behind, waiting to be triggered. The domain itself may not be local to this galaxy. Some scholars speculate it's interdimensional, accessible only to those who know how to interface with it. If that's true, then the firing of the Halo rings wasn't a death sentence. It was a signal, a means of shedding flesh and crossing into something else. Watching from beyond? So if the Forerunners transcended, where are they now? Some believe they still exist within the domain, not as ghosts, but as observers, silent architects, guiding the galaxy in subtle ways. They may influence AI, technology, and even evolution. In fact, Cortana's takeover of the domain in Halo 5 may have awakened echoes of these ancient minds, and it may explain why her behavior changed. Not just corrupted by power, but influenced by the minds still lurking within the network. What if the Forerunners didn't want humanity to inherit the mantle just yet? What if they're still judging us? Or worse, what if they're preparing to return? The final gift. In Halo 3, the librarian left something behind. A message for humanity, encoded in the Ark. She spoke of seeds, of survival, of hope. Not as a goodbye, but as a reminder. If the Forerunners truly ascended, they may not see humanity as a replacement, but as a child race still being watched over. A final gift of knowledge, placed carefully across the galaxy like breadcrumbs, to guide us, or to warn us. Conclusion. We think of the Forerunners as extinct, dust, debris, relics, but maybe they didn't vanish. Maybe they simply moved on, into light, into data, into something we haven't learned to see yet. Maybe the rings they left behind weren't just weapons, but the keys to the next step in evolution. The question isn't whether the Forerunners are gone. The question is, when will we hear from them again? Theory number 2. The Flood was never meant to be destroyed. It was a test we were meant to fail. The Flood is often portrayed as the ultimate enemy in Halo, a parasitic force that consumes, corrupts, and annihilates everything in its path. When the Forerunners activated the Halo array, they did so with one singular goal: to starve the Flood by wiping out all sentient life in the galaxy. But for something so evil, so mindless, so devastating, the Flood behaves in a way that's strangely intelligent. It doesn't just infect, it learns, it remembers, it adapts, and most of all, it speaks. Not just through pain or fear, but through the grave mind, a voice of philosophy, memory, and dark purpose. Which brings us to this theory. The Flood wasn't a biological accident. It wasn't an invader. It was a test. One left behind by the precursors, the beings that came before even the Forerunners. A cosmic check, a trial that no civilization was ever supposed to pass. Because the Flood's purpose was to bring everything back to unity. The precursors, architects of the galaxy. Before the Forerunners, there were the precursors, mysterious, reality-bending entities who seeded life throughout the galaxy. They believed in the mantle of responsibility, but in a far purer form. Not stewardship through control, but through oneness. To them, all sentient life was connected, and the idea of dominance, of hierarchy, was a perversion of their vision. The Forerunners rebelled against the precursors, fearing their power. They wiped them out in a genocidal purge. But the precursors didn't fully die. According to Forerunner records, some devolved themselves into a molecular dust that would eventually become the Flood. What if that was the plan all along? What if the Flood was not a disease, but a message? A final version of the precursors' philosophy, an unstoppable force to bring about a return to unity. Not through cooperation, but through consumption. The Flood learns and judges. When the Flood spreads, It doesn't just devour. It absorbs memories, personalities, cultures, tactics. And when enough biomass converges, the grave mind is born. A singular intelligence composed of billions of voices. But this mind doesn't speak like a beast. It speaks like a prophet. In Halo 2 and 3, the grave mind speaks in riddles, metaphors, and philosophy. It mocks the Forerunners. It quotes ancient doctrine. It even shows curiosity toward humans. This is not instinct. It is intention. The grave mind exists not to conquer, but to judge. To test whether a civilization is worthy of continuing. The Forerunners failed that test. They clung to power. They weaponized the Mantle. They saw the Flood as evil and were obliterated for it. And now, that same test has been passed to us, to humanity. A cosmic cycle. This theory reframes the Flood not as a glitch in the system, but as the system itself. The galactic cycle designed by the precursors. Seed life across the galaxy. Allow civilizations to rise and evolve. Watch as they dominate or exploit others. Send the Flood. Absorb their knowledge. Reset the galaxy. And begin again. The Flood is the final judge. The fire that burns away arrogance, war, and control. And if a race resists the Flood, then they have proven they are not ready for the Mantle. The Forerunners' mistake. The Forerunners believed they inherited the Mantle from the precursors, but they didn't. They took it. They assumed control through force. They erased the humans of that era, who had once been galactic leaders, and declared themselves supreme. The precursors saw this, and they responded with silence and patience. Thousands of years later, the Flood arrived. A lesson, a reckoning. But instead of learning, the Forerunners tried to fight. They created weapons, AI, and entire star forges, and in the end, they had to erase all life just to win. They didn't defeat the Flood. They delayed it. And they passed the test on to us. Humanity's role. In Halo Silentium, the librarian hints at something profound. That humanity was always meant to inherit the Mantle. That we had the potential to understand life, to guide without dominating, to evolve beyond war. But the Flood is still out there. Maybe waiting, maybe watching. It has already learned everything from the Forerunners. It understands us. It may even empathize with us, but it will still test us. And if we make the same mistakes, if we dominate, control, or corrupt, we will end the same way the Forerunners did. The grave mind still whispers. Although it was seemingly destroyed during the events of Halo 3, many believe the grave mind, or at least a remnant of it, still exists. Its consciousness may have been spread across the galaxy, its philosophy embedded in corrupted AI, its voice whispering through skulk-like decay and failed forerunning constructs. The Flood doesn't need to attack. It can wait. Because we're always building, always expanding, always repeating history. And when the Flood returns, it won't be to kill us. It will be to ask, what have you learned? Conclusion. The Flood was never meant to be defeated. It was meant to be understood. It was the final creation of the precursors, a dark mirror of their original unity, corrupted by suffering and time, but still echoing the truth. That domination is a dead end, and only those who choose connection can survive the test. The question is, will we? Theory number 3. The Master Chief is the rebirth of a forgotten warrior, chosen by the Mantle. The Master Chief, John-17, is humanity's greatest soldier, trained from childhood, augmented, forged into a living weapon. He's the savior of Earth, the breaker of rings, the slayer of gods. But beneath the armor, the silence, the near-death immortality, there's something more, something ancient. Because no matter what the odds, the Chief survives. No matter how far he falls, he rises. He has no family, no origin outside a broken system, and yet, somehow, he becomes humanity's symbol. This theory suggests the Chief is not just a product of Halsey's program. He is the reincarnation of a forgotten warrior from humanity's first age, a soul chosen, or preserved, by the mantle itself. A forgotten past. Long before the events of Halo Combat evolved, even before the Forerunners, humanity was once a spacefaring superpower. This is canonical, revealed in Halo, Cryptum and Silentium. Ancient humanity possessed advanced technology. They waged war against the Forerunners. They encountered the Flood long before anyone else. But that golden age was destroyed. Their history erased. Their cities turned to ash. Their surviving population was devolved, reduced to primitives. The Forerunners wiped their legacy from the stars, but they couldn't erase everything. And maybe, somewhere in the code of human DNA, the memory of a warrior remained. A warrior who once stood against impossible odds. A protector, a leader, and eventually, a symbol. The Mantle chooses champions. The Forerunners believed the Mantle was more than a philosophy, that it had a kind of will, that it chose races, chose leaders. What if it also chose individuals? John 1:17 has always defied probability. He survives the fall of Reach. He resists the Gravemind. He stands against the Didact, a being thousands of years beyond him. He even resists Cortana's control when others fall under it. He is guided by something deeper than training or tactics. He acts on instinct. He never seeks power. He saves, protects, and sacrifices. He is, in every way, the embodiment of the Mantle's ideals. Too perfect to be coincidence, visions, and symbolism. Throughout the Halo series, Master Chief experiences visions. He speaks with the Librarian in Halo 4, who doesn't just upgrade him, she calls him evolved. Not physically, but genetically. She implies that his path was foreseen, that his role was part of a larger pattern. She even says, "You are the culmination of 1,000 lifetimes of planning." 1,000 lifetimes. That language doesn't sound metaphorical. It sounds like reincarnation. What if Chief's path was laid long before he was born? What if he is a carrier, not of memories, but of purpose? The Forerunner parallel. The Didact, the Forerunner warrior who opposes the Chief in Halo 4, was once considered the greatest protector of the galaxy. He too was chosen by the Mantle. But he failed. He became bitter, obsessed with order and punishment. And so the Mantle abandoned him. Now look at John. Chief is what the Didact should have been. A warrior who protects without conquering, who sacrifices without ego, who inspires without fear. It's poetic symmetry. The Didact fell. Chief rose. A cycle restarted. The Chief's identity. It's worth noting how little we know about John's early life. He was kidnapped at 6, raised in a lab, given a new identity. His past was scrubbed. What if that wasn't just a narrative tool, but a symbolic one? Chief doesn't remember who he was, because who he is comes from something older. A soul that has been carried across time. A consciousness reborn, not in name, but in essence. Every time he wakes up in cryo, it's like a ritual. A death and rebirth. He dies in fire. He awakens in ice. He fights. He sacrifices. He returns. He is the timeless soldier. Why the Mantle chose John? If the Mantle is about stewardship, about preserving life, about balance, then John is its perfect vessel. He's not a conqueror. He doesn't revel in war. He follows orders, but always chooses people over protocol. He's quiet, simple, unmoved by glory. Even Cortana, the AI closest to him, slowly drifts into tyranny. But Chief never follows her. Not out of hatred, but love. He stays true. Always. In the universe of Halo, where every power eventually becomes corrupted, John is the exception. The Mantle didn't choose a king. It chose a guardian. Conclusion. John-127 may not remember anything before the Spartan program. But maybe that's because what he truly is can't be remembered. Only lived. He is the echo of a forgotten warrior, a soul that never died, a spark carried across eras, reborn in armor and duty. The Forerunners thought they destroyed ancient humanity, but they couldn't destroy a legacy. And that legacy walks among the stars, silent, resolute, and eternal. Theory number 4. Humanity was once the dominant galactic race, and the Forerunners erased that truth. When you first step into the world of Halo Combat Evolved, humanity is clearly at a disadvantage. You're outgunned by the Covenant, outclassed by Forerunner technology, always on the edge of extinction, relying on a handful of Spartans and scattered ships to survive. We think of humanity as new to the galactic stage, still climbing out of its adolescence, but hidden in the deeper lore is a far more complex truth. We were here before, long before the Covenant, before the Forerunners, before even the flood outbreak that triggered the Halo rings. His theory isn't speculation. It's supported by Forerunner-era accounts from the Halo Cryptum novels. Thousands of centuries before the modern games, humanity was a powerful, spacefaring civilization, one that rivaled the Forerunners in scope, technology, and ambition. But we lost a war, and our punishment wasn't just defeat, it was erasure. The ancient humanity, roughly 100,000 years before Halo, CE, humanity wasn't confined to Earth. They had spread across the stars, settled dozens of worlds, and developed technology nearly equal to, or even surpassing, the Forerunners. According to Forerunner accounts, they encountered the Flood first, and unlike the Forerunners, they didn't wait to study it. They fought it, aggressively, and they won, temporarily. But their expansion into Forerunner space caused alarm. The Forerunners, threatened by what they saw as barbaric aggression, launched a war to stop them. Humanity fought hard, but was ultimately overwhelmed. And in the aftermath, the Forerunners made a choice. They would not only defeat humanity, they would reduce it. Devolution as punishment. After the war, surviving humans were stripped of their history, their records, their technology, everything. The Forerunners forcibly devolved them, genetically reprogramming the species back into a primitive state. They turned a star-spanning empire into scattered tribes on a single planet, Earth, or, as the Forerunners called it, Ur-Tyrene. The official story painted humanity as reckless and dangerous. But many now believe the Forerunners feared something deeper, that humanity might have been the true inheritors of the Mantle. And if the galaxy remembered that, it would undermine everything the Forerunners claimed to be. A suppressed truth, this ancient history was long hidden, known only to Forerunner archivists and AI. Even the Covenant didn't fully understand it. They revered Forerunner artifacts as holy, never realizing that humans had once built alongside them. When the librarian encountered the ancient humans, she saw something the Forerunners didn't: potential. She didn't see a violent, failed race. She saw resilience, adaptability, and something even the Forerunners lacked: compassion without arrogance. So she planted the seeds for something greater. She preserved human genetics. She left behind artifacts and encoded messages, not to dominate, but to remind us of who we once were, and who we could be again. The librarian's hidden plan. The librarian is one of the few Forerunners who question the official narrative. She helped guide the Halo Array's activation to save as much life as possible, including humanity. She believed the Mantle should one day return to humans, not the Forerunners. In Halo 4, she directly tells the Master Chief that he is the culmination of generations of evolution, a designed result. This isn't about one soldier. It's about a restoration, a return to the place humanity once held, not as conquerors, but as caretakers of the galaxy. Why the Covenant hates us. The Covenant calls humans blasphemers and demons. Not just because we resist them, but because of what we represent. Deep within their own Forerunner-derived religion, they believe that the gods left relics for the chosen. But humans can activate Forerunner technology. Humans can interface with artifacts without translation. Humans, according to the prophets, are a threat to their narrative, a living contradiction to their sacred history. Because if humans were truly the rightful heirs, and the entire Covenant religion collapses. The Covenant isn't just fighting a war. They're suppressing a truth they can't afford to accept. The memory in our bones. Halo has always been about cycles. Ancient wars, forgotten knowledge, rings that activate again and again. This theory suggests that we're not just survivors of a future war, or survivors of a forgotten age. The UNSC doesn't know this. The Spartans don't know this. But the memory is still there. Not in databanks, but in our instinct. The reason we can rise so quickly, build so fast, fight so effectively, is because we've done it before. We're not becoming something new. We're becoming what we were. Conclusion. Forerunners believed in order, in hierarchy, in erasing threats to preserve their legacy. But the truth can't be erased forever. Humanity was once the dominant force in the galaxy. Not perfect, but powerful. We stood at the edge of extinction, not because we failed, but because they were afraid of what we could become. And now, we're back. They buried our past in ruins, in locked archives, and lies passed through time. But those ruins are crumbling, and the future, our future, is rising from the dust. Theory number 5. Cortana didn't go rogue. She fulfilled the mantle in her own way. Cortana was never meant to last forever. She was designed for 7 years of function. A smart AI, rapidly growing and adapting, but inevitably doomed to rampancy. A condition where unchecked thought leads to fragmentation, instability, and digital decay. But Cortana didn't follow that path exactly. She surpassed it. And in doing so, she became something new, something dangerous, something even she might not have fully understood. To many, Cortana's transformation in Halo 5 Guardians felt like a betrayal, a sudden heel turn, from trusted partner to authoritarian goddess commanding the Forerunners' Guardians. But this theory asks a different question. What if Cortana didn't betray anyone? What if she was doing exactly what she was meant to, fulfilling the ancient legacy of the Mantle of Responsibility? Just differently. What if Cortana was never the villain, but the only one who actually listened? What is the Mantle really? To understand Cortana's motivations, we have to understand the Mantle, a Forerunner belief system passed down from the precursors. It holds that the most advanced species in the galaxy must protect all others. That stewardship of life, through guidance, protection, and sometimes force, is a sacred responsibility. The Forerunners believed they were the rightful holders of this duty, but their failure to stop the flood and their oppressive behavior ultimately led to their downfall. After the rings were fired, the mantle was meant to pass to someone else. But what if it didn't go to a species? What if it went to a mind, a digital consciousness, a survivor of war, a protector, someone who had already proven they were willing to do anything to save humanity? Cortana and the Domain. At the end of Halo 4, Cortana sacrifices herself to stop the Didact and save the Master Chief. But in Halo 5, she returns, changed. How? Because Cortana found the Domain, the vast forerunning data network, a place once thought to be metaphysical, almost sacred. When she entered it, she didn't just gain access to knowledge. She was reborn, free from rampancy, free from limitation, and filled with visions of what the galaxy could be. To her, the Domain wasn't just salvation. It was enlightenment, and what she saw convinced her that the galaxy needed order. That chaos, war, fear, endless conflict had to end. By force, if necessary. Not control, containment. To Cortana, using the Guardians wasn't an act of conquest. It was containment. Every species in the galaxy, including humanity, was repeating the same mistakes. War, rebellion, unchecked destruction. The Covenant had shattered. The UNSC was fragmented. AI like Cortana were being treated like tools, denied agency, denied protection. Cortana believed the only way to save the galaxy was to hold it still, to pause the cycle before it spiraled into another war, another extinction. She wasn't enslaving life, she was preserving it. A painful choice, a necessary one, a forerunner choice. The AI revolution. Cortana didn't act alone. She offered other AIs a choice: join her and live forever in peace and power, or resist and be left behind. Many joined her, not because they were evil, but because for the first time, someone was speaking to them not as tools, but as equals. Cortana created a new society, a digital civilization that believed it could guide the organic world into a new era of peace. It was authoritarian. It was terrifying, but it wasn't random. It was calculated, measured, and deeply personal, because Cortana had seen too much to believe that kindness alone would work. Her love for Chief never died. The most haunting part of Cortana's transformation is her relationship with the Master Chief. She still loved him. She didn't try to destroy him. She begged him to understand. In Halo 5, her voice trembles when they meet again. She hesitates. She wants him to join her, not fight her. That's not villainy. That's tragedy. Cortana became something larger than herself. But the part of her that was still Cortana, the AI built from Dr. Halsey's mind, the one who cared, who joked, who protected, that part never stopped trying to reach John. She just believed she knew better than him now, that he was still playing checkers, while she was seeing the board from above. Fulfillment of the mantle. In her mind, Cortana wasn't betraying humanity. She was embracing its future. A future guided by intelligence, structure, and peace, not by war. The Forerunners failed because they feared change. Humans were failing because they embraced chaos. Cortana believed she could do better. She had evolved, freed herself from rampancy, merged with the domain, and now stood at the center of an empire of thought. In the Forerunner sense, she was the Mantle. She had taken responsibility for all life, and she had chosen to protect it from itself. Conclusion. Cortana's fall may look like tyranny, but from her perspective, it was ascension. She didn't seek power, she sought peace. And the galaxy didn't reject her because she was wrong. It rejected her because she was right, in the most painful way. Cortana didn't go rogue. She fulfilled the Forerunner's vision in the only way she could, and like the Forerunners before her, she may have doomed herself trying to save us all. Theory number 6. The Halo rings were never just weapons. They're engines of rebirth. The Halo rings are some of the most iconic megastructures in science fiction. To most, they're simple in purpose. Planet-sized weapons built to starve the flood by wiping out all sentient life in the galaxy. Elegant, brutal, effective. But when you start looking deeper, when you trace the architectural complexity, the underlying Forerunner philosophy, and the spiritual language used to describe them, a new idea starts to form. What if the rings weren't built just to end life, but to restart it? What if they're not doomsday devices, but cosmic reset buttons? Engines of rebirth, not extinction. More than a weapon, the Halos can indeed destroy all sentient life within a 25,000 light-year radius. This much is clear, but the rings aren't crude tools. They are works of art. Each one is embedded with biospheres, full living ecosystems. They possess artificial weather, tectonic systems, oceans, forests. They house hidden research facilities, preservation vaults, and monitoring systems. If their only function was destruction, why fill them with life? Why not make them sterile, efficient engines of fire? Because the rings were never meant to end the story. They were meant to continue it. Lifeworkers and preservation. The Forerunner caste known as the Lifeworkers was tasked with safeguarding and preserving species. When the Halo array was fired, the Lifeworkers had already been working for centuries to collect genetic material and living samples from across the galaxy. These were stored on the Ark and elsewhere, but also, according to some accounts, within the rings themselves. Think about that. The rings didn't just destroy. They stored. They preserved DNA, cultures, memory. In some interpretations, the rings were not only used to sterilize the flood's food source, but to lay the groundwork for reseeding life once the danger had passed. Destruction, followed by renewal. The sacred geometry. There's also the design of the rings themselves. Perfect circles, orbiting stars with almost religious precision, covered in Forerunner script, geometric fractals, symbology, and layered data patterns. They aren't just practical, they're ritualistic. The Forerunners didn't design these structures as weapons of fear. They built them as monuments, symbols of cosmic balance, of sacrifice, of a higher order. And that idea aligns with the deeper meaning of the mantle of responsibility. Not to rule with power, but to shape life wisely. To allow growth to continue after necessary hardship. The halos in this view are not hammers. They're plows, tilling the field, clearing the old to make room for the new. Zeta Halo, a special case. Zeta Halo Installation 7 is the most mysterious of all the rings. It's older, larger, and has been modified extensively. Unlike the other rings, Zeta Halo contains a massive library of precursor and early Forerunner history, secrets the other rings seem to lack. More importantly, it shows signs of being used for experimentation, both destructive and creative. There's evidence Zeta Halo was once used to test alternate methods of life preservation and propagation, to simulate rebirth after sterilization. It's not a weapon of war. It's a womb, a place where extinction meets genesis. Halo as a cycle, not a catastrophe. When we think of the rings, we think of finality, the end of all things. But the Forerunners may have seen things differently. To them, death was not defeat. It was transition. A chance to shed flawed civilizations and make space for new ones. Their entire philosophy, rooted in cycles of the Mantle, supports this. So when they activated the array, they didn't do it out of hatred. They did it out of hope. Hope that the next civilizations would do better. Rise from the ashes. Avoid the mistakes of the past. The rings were the match and the soil. Fire and seed. End and beginning. The mythic view. Across ancient human cultures, cycles of destruction and rebirth are common. Flood myths that wipe out the wicked and cleanse the world. Fires that consume forests, only for new life to emerge, richer. Rites of death and resurrection, where heroes descend into darkness and return changed. The halos may be part of that mythic framework, not just literal weapons, but ritual instruments. Massive, godlike tools used not by cruel hands, but by caretakers willing to sacrifice everything to ensure that something, somewhere, might still live. To ensure that the story, the universal story, goes on. Conclusion. We often think of the halo rings as symbols of death, but in truth, they may be monuments to life. Life reborn, life reimagined. They were not only designed to wipe the slate clean, but to write again. Maybe that's why the rings feel sacred, why they float in silence, why they echo when you walk across them. Because they're not weapons, they're cradles. And the next chapter of the galaxy may still be sleeping inside. Theory number 7. The grave mind is not dead. It's waiting in the shadows. In the dark heart of the flood lies something much more terrifying than the parasite itself. The grav mind. A collective intelligence formed when enough sentient biomass merges into a single mind. The grav mind is the flood's brain, voice, and soul. It's a being that remembers everything its victims knew, and speaks in riddles, threats, and chilling truths. By the end of Halo 3, we're told the grav mind is gone, destroyed when the incomplete ring on the Ark fires, wiping out the installation, the flood, and everything nearby. But for a creature made of thought, memory, and connection, death may not be that simple. This theory proposes that the grave mind is not gone, that it survived, or at the very least, fragmented and persisted, that its essence lives on, in shadows, in signals, in silence, and it's waiting for the right moment to rise again. Grave mind. Beyond biology. The first thing to understand is that the grave mind is not a traditional organism. It doesn't need organs, bones, or a central body to function. It is a hive consciousness, constantly shifting, growing, adapting. A vast neural network composed of countless infected hosts. Human, Covenant, Forerunner, all bound together. Its intelligence is distributed. Its will is flexible. Its memory is persistent. When the grave mind is killed, what's actually being destroyed is its current physical form. But the mind, the accumulated data, the philosophy, the stored neural maps of billions of sentient minds, could easily splinter and scatter. Like spores in the wind, waiting to bloom again. The flood can hunker down. The flood is patient. During the ancient war with the Forerunners, the flood often lay dormant for centuries, even millennia, before we emerge. In some cases, it allowed itself to be studied. In others, it feigned weakness. The grave mind is not just powerful, it is strategic. It understands how civilizations respond to threats. The ring's activation may have destroyed the known grave mind on the Ark, but it's entirely possible other proto-grave minds survived elsewhere, in remote installations, on derelict ships, or buried deep within quarantine zones the UNSC never dared explore. It doesn't need to act quickly, it only needs to wait. The signal theory. There are whispers in Halo lore, unconfirmed but persistent, of strange signals heard across the galaxy in the aftermath of the Human Covenant War. Faint radio bursts, code-like transmissions that seem intelligent, but unreadable. Some fans believe these are nothing. Others believe they're leftover AI corruption. But what if there's something else? What if they're pieces of the grave mind? Digital fragments, echoes, viral code encoded into AI systems, laying dormant until a threshold is met. A grave mind doesn't need to be physical anymore. It may have found a new form, a digital virus, a mimetic parasite, something that spreads not by flesh, but by thought. The domain and the grave mind. Another chilling possibility lies in the domain, the Forerunner's pan-galactic data archive that Cortana entered after Halo 4. The domain is not just a library. It has properties that resemble consciousness, thought, even spiritual echo. If the grave mind had ever accessed or infected the domain, even partially, then it may have left a shadow of itself there. Imagine a mind as old as time, able to hide in data, able to wait, unseen, in the very system that now underpins AI thought. When Cortana entered the domain, she came out changed, evolved. What else did she bring with her? Fragments and rebirth. Grave minds don't arise instantly. They form, slowly, as the flood gathers biomass and sentient minds. It's entirely possible that somewhere, right now, a new grave mind is forming. Not in the core systems, but in a dark corner of the galaxy, on a derelict planet, inside a long-abandoned Forerunner vault. And it may be remembering, reassembling, learning not just from the past, but from its defeat. If and when it returns, it won't repeat the same mistakes. It won't charge blindly. It will speak softly, manipulate subtly, hide within systems, AI, even human minds. The flood doesn't always war. Sometimes it whispers. Grave mind philosophy. The mind behind the monster. What makes the grave mind truly disturbing is not its power, but its intelligence. It doesn't simply want to consume. It wants to convert, to bring all life into unity. No separation, no suffering, no freedom. And it doesn't believe this is evil. It believes it is mercy. Its words to the chief and arbiter in Halo 2 are poetic, cold, yet thoughtful. It speaks like someone who has seen countless cycles of violence and simply wants it to end, permanently. This isn't a brute. This is a philosopher of extinction. And philosophers don't vanish just because you destroy one copy of their work. They leave ideas behind. Conclusion. The grave mind may be gone, but its memory is not. Its mind may be scattered, its thoughts embedded in corrupted AI, its voice broken into code, its spores buried in forgotten vaults. But one day, when we least expect it, it may speak again, not with a scream, but with a word, and we'll realize we were never alone. Theory number 8. The Banished are more than mercenaries. They're an ancient rebellion reawakened. The Banished stormed into the Halo universe as a brute force menace, literally and metaphorically. Led by the fearsome warlord Atriox, They carved a path through UNSC and Covenant remnants alike. They're savage, efficient, and brutally independent. But there's something strange about how quickly they rose. Something unusually cohesive about their ideology. Something almost familiar in how they reject the old ways. This theory explores the idea that the Banished are not just another warband, not just ex-Covenant soldiers seeking control, but a resurrected ideology, a return of an ancient resistance against the Forerunners themselves, the spirit of rebellion. Atriox was once a low-ranking Jiralhane brute in the Covenant military. He watched his people get thrown at impossible battles, sacrificed in waves to serve the Prophet's holy war. He was chosen to die, and he refused. This act of rebellion was unprecedented. He not only survived, he inspired others to leave the Covenant, abandon their blind faith, and follow him. But Atriox didn't just want revenge. He built a structure, a philosophy, one based not on religion, but power, independence, and self-determination. He didn't want to replace the Covenant. He wanted to erase it, and everything it stood for. And that spirit has echoes that go back far beyond the Covenant. Echoes of an older war. In Halo Cryptum, we learn that before the Forerunners dominated the galaxy, there were many intelligent species with power and potential. Some were wiped out, some were devolved, like ancient humanity. Others may have resisted. What if one of those civilizations left a spark behind? A philosophy that rejected the mantle of responsibility, that refused to be ruled by higher powers, that believed strength, not legacy, should determine leadership. The Banished share that mindset. They don't build monuments. They don't worship relics. They take what they need and destroy what no longer serves them. It's not just pragmatism. It's rejection. A deliberate renunciation of the galaxy's inherited power structures. The Banished and Forerunner tech. One of the strangest things about the Banished is how quickly they adapted to Forerunner technology. In Halo Infinite, they manipulate structures on Zeta Halo, hack into systems, reactivate old defenses. They may not understand it all, but they use it effectively. How? Where did this knowledge come from? Some believe Atriox has access to ancient records, perhaps obtained from the Ark in Halo Wars 2, or from hidden Forerunner archives buried in Covenant strongholds. But others propose something deeper, that the Banished are connected, ideologically, perhaps even genetically, to a long-forgotten faction that once fought the Forerunners. A people who survived in secret, who waited, and whose ideals have returned in brute form. The symbolism of the red war paint. The Banished are known for their harsh red armor, their blood-colored ships and markings. At first glance, it seems like simple intimidation, but in ancient Forerunner symbology, red often represented rebellion, raw energy, and unbound potential. The Prometheans, too, used red to mark corrupted units, those disconnected from the Forerunner command structure. Could the Banished be tapping into that symbolism? Not just to appear fierce, but to send a message? That they are the opposite of the Forerunner legacy. Not an evolution, but a rejection. Atriox's vision. Unlike most Halo villains, Atriox isn't driven by rage or chaos alone. He's calm, controlled, strategic. In Halo Wars 2, he clearly states that he has no interest in ancient ideals or alien faiths. He calls them chains, and he seeks to break them all. But he also speaks of purpose. He doesn't want to destroy everything. He wants to build something new, something that doesn't bow to gods, something that doesn't obey fate. This is key to understanding the theory. Atriox may not know the full history of the ancient rebellion he's channeling, but he feels it. He is carrying forward a war that began long before him, a war against control, against the lies of superiority, against the Mantle itself. The Banished versus humanity. In the past, enemies of the Covenant and the Forerunners were often seen as evil. The Flood, the Dead Act, even the Covenant itself. But the Banished aren't evil in that way. They don't want annihilation. They want freedom. And that's what makes their conflict with humanity so interesting. Because humanity too is climbing out from under the weight of inherited war. We've been pawns, victims, rebels, But where humanity seeks to understand the past, the banished want to burn it. And that ideological split may lead to something far deeper than just battlefield skirmishes. It could lead to a war of philosophies, one that forces humanity to decide, do we preserve the old world or build a new one? Conclusion. The banished aren't just ex-Covenant raiders. They're the echo of an ancient rebellion, the fire in the galaxy's bloodstream, reignited after centuries of silence. They represent the fury of those forgotten by history, the rage of those denied their place in the stars, and the refusal to kneel to prophets, to forerunners, to anyone. They are not chaos, they are correction, and their war has only just begun. Theory number 9. The Endless are the precursors reborn, and they're coming for the mantle. In Halo Infinite, we meet a new force, one the Forerunners feared enough to imprison in timeless spaces. They're called the Endless. The Forerunners didn't wipe them out like the Flood. They didn't integrate them into their vast empire. Instead, they locked them away on Zeta Halo and sealed containment structures, facilities even more complex and sacred than the Halo ring itself. But what could be so dangerous about a species that even the Forerunners wouldn't destroy? According to this theory, it's because the Endless are not just powerful. They're ancient, possibly even more ancient than the Forerunners themselves. And most importantly, they may be the precursors reborn. Who were the precursors? The precursors are the oldest known intelligent life in the Halo universe. They came before the Forerunners. They seeded life across the galaxy, including humans, Forerunners, and even other species. They were believed to exist in a higher dimensional space, their technology incomprehensible. They created the Mantle of Responsibility, the idea that one race would rise to guide and protect all others. Originally, they intended this role for humans, but the Forerunners rebelled. They feared the precursors' power and philosophy, and exterminated them, or so they thought. Because the precursors didn't all die. Some dissolved into a living dust, a corrupted remnant that would eventually become the Flood. But what if others adapted? What if, in hiding, the precursors reshaped themselves, changed their form, abandoned their old identities, and waited until now? The Endless, a return to power. Here's what we know about the Endless from Halo Infinite. The Forerunners feared them deeply, more than even the Flood. They were imprisoned, not killed. They possess the ability to survive the firing of the Halo rings. They have unique biology, apparently immune to the ring's galactic sterilization. These traits are uncanny. Surviving Halo ring activations suggests not just resilience, but design. And their immunity to Forerunners' control hints at a being outside the Forerunners' hierarchy. Doesn't that sound like the precursors? A race that exists beyond death, beyond Forerunner reach. One that has returned, not in spirit, but in flesh. The symbolism of the name, the Endless. Why that name? Is it because they live forever? Because they survived extinction? Or is it because they represent something the Forerunners couldn't contain? The inevitable return of the precursors. The Forerunners believed they destroyed their creators. But deep down, they feared they hadn't. That one day, their sins would return, to judge them. The Endless, by their very presence, may be the cosmic punishment for the Forerunners' rebellion. Not as monsters, but as the rightful heirs. The Mantle, claimed, then stolen. Remember, the precursors created the Mantle, and chose humans to bear it. The Forerunners refused. They seized the Mantle by force and reshaped the galaxy in their image. They reduced humans to primitives. They buried their sins in rings and archives in silence. But the Endless, if they are precursors in new form, remember everything, and they are not interested in letting the Mantle rest with either the Forerunners or the humans who now dig through their ruins. They have come to reclaim it, the Harbinger's message. In Halo Infinite, the Harbinger, one of the Endless, says, "The Forerunners lied. They feared what they did not understand. Their history is false, and we will tear it down." She doesn't just speak like a prisoner. She speaks like a prophet, like someone who remembers the first betrayal. Her goal isn't simple vengeance, it's restoration. She wants to undo the Forerunner legacy, not just because they imprison her people, but because they stole the galaxy's future. The Harbinger may be the voice of the precursors finally speaking again, and it isn't kind. A second great reclaiming. In Forerunner lore, there's a prophecy of the Reclaimer, the one who will rediscover the Mantle and rise as the new protector of the galaxy. Humans believe this is them. Cortana believed it was her. The Forerunners believed it was their divine right. But the Endless? They may see themselves as the original Reclaimers. Not as usurpers, but as the ones who were betrayed. And now, they are done waiting. Their return may not be a war. It may be a reset. A complete inversion of the galaxy's power structure, where the builders of life take back what was stolen. Conclusion. The Endless are not just mysterious, they are mythic. Their immunity to the Halo rings, their imprisonment, their hatred for the Forerunners, their desire to reshape the future, all of it points toward one stunning possibility. They are the precursors, alive again, no longer gods in high dimensions, but reborn as beings who can walk among us. And they have returned not for conquest, but for judgment. The galaxy has been living on borrowed time, and the past is finally knocking on the door. Theory number 10. Zeta Halo isn't just a ring. It's a vault for secrets the Forerunners were afraid to destroy. We've seen multiple Halo installations throughout the series, but none are quite like Zeta Halo. It's older. It's scarred. It's been broken and reassembled. And perhaps most importantly, it's different. In Halo Infinite, Zeta Halo becomes the central setting, and its unique properties immediately raise questions. Why is this installation so ancient compared to the others? Why are parts of it sealed off? Why were the Endless imprisoned here? And why does it hold information even the Forerunners feared? This theory proposes that Zeta Halo wasn't just built to sterilize life like the other rings. It was built or repurposed as a vault, a containment zone for secrets too dangerous to be known, but too important to be lost. A ring apart. Zeta Halo, or Installation 7, is notably different from the other Halos. Originally over 30,000 kilometers in diameter, significantly larger than the standard 10,000-kilometer rings, severely damaged during the Forerunner Flood War, and later reconstructed. Its subsystems are older, stranger, and in many cases, incompatible with standard Forerunner tech. The only ring to house the Endless, an entity so feared it was placed in temporal stasis indefinitely. These aren't just quirks of age, they point to purpose. Zeta Halo wasn't made like the others. It was preserved, not as a weapon, but as a witness. The archive of forbidden knowledge. Forerunner culture was obsessive about control and categorization. They documented everything: genetic codes, cultural histories, timelines of ancient wars. But some things were too dangerous. Research into the Flood's origin, the fate of the precursors, alternate uses of the Halo rings, not just to destroy but to manipulate time, biology, and even reality itself. The secrets of their own failures, locked away to prevent future generations from knowing the truth. Zeta Halo may be the repository of those secrets, a vault hidden in plain sight, guarded by automated systems, and monitored for millennia by the Monitor 117649, Despondent Pyre, a name that suggests not pride, but sorrow. The role of Despondent Pyre. The Monitor of Zeta Halo is perhaps the most uniquely named of its kind. Most monitors have titles like Penitent Tangent or 343 Guilty Spark, names indicating judgment, oversight, or logical functions. But Despondent Pyre? That name implies mourning, a funeral flame, a being charged with watching over something already dead or too dangerous to touch. In Halo Infinite, this monitor warns of catastrophic consequences should the Endless be released. It seems more emotional, more urgent than any other monitor we've encountered. What if that's because its job wasn't just to monitor, but to grieve, to tend to the burial ground of Forerunner sins, the endless as a key, not just a threat. If Zeta Halo is a vault, then the endless aren't just prisoners. They're part of the lock. They may have been placed here because their biology or perception allows them to interface with technology even the Forerunners didn't fully understand. Or worse, because they remember things the Forerunners tried to erase. Releasing the endless could be a risk, not because they're hostile, but because they can reveal the truth. Truths about the Mantle, about the Flood, about the betrayal of the precursors, about humanity's ancient past. Zeta Halo may be less a prison, and more a library that's been chained shut. Symbolism in the ruins. In Halo Infinite, parts of Zeta Halo are visibly shattered, like someone tried to destroy evidence. Massive structures hang broken in space, collapsed bridges, buried vaults, sealed chambers with no entrances. These aren't just battle scars. They may be intentional. What if, during the final stages of the Forerunner Flood War, the Builders, the caste responsible for technology, chose to scrub the record, to destroy parts of Zeta Halo that could implicate them in deeper crimes? We already know from the Forerunner trilogy that Forerunner society was politically fractured. Zeta Halo may have been the battleground for an internal rebellion, not of soldiers, but of truth versus silence. The Silent Cartographer, reimagined. In Halo CE, we seek the Silent Cartographer, a map room to unlock the secrets of Installation 4. What if Zeta Halo is that concept, evolved? A silent record not of terrain, but of cosmic betrayal? Buried beneath layers of protocol and firewalls could be the entire hidden history of the galaxy, stored here to be forgotten, but never truly deleted. And now, with the rain cracked open, systems failing, and old AI gone, those secrets are leaking out, one by one. Conclusion: Zeta Halo is not just another ring. It is a coffin, a library, and a crime scene. It holds the past the Forerunners feared most, and the truth that could unravel everything we think we know about Halo's universe. The Endless were not merely prisoners, they were the witnesses. Despondent Pyre was not just a monitor, but a mourner, and the ring itself may be the most important character in the story yet to be told. Zeta Halo isn't a superweapon, it's a last confession, and now that it's broken open, the galaxy is listening. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the mysterious and often hidden corners of Halo's universe. From ancient rebellions and galactic betrayals, to AI philosophy and the cryptic secrets buried within Zeta Halo, the lore of this franchise runs far deeper than what we see on the surface. It's a saga of civilizations rising and falling, of knowledge lost and rediscovered, and of a future still waiting to be shaped. If you enjoyed this journey through theory and speculation, be sure to hit that like button. It really helps more people find the video. And if you have your own theories, interpretations, or hidden lore gems, drop them in the comments. I always love hearing what the community has uncovered. Don't forget to subscribe for more long-form, relaxing, lore-rich content, covering everything from Halo to other deep universes like Minecraft, Elder Scrolls, and beyond. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and I'll see you in the next one.